Here's what happened. Stella, we spoke on the same panel session at Running Man Festival, a wellness festival of 1,500 humans in progress. And what you talked about had an impact on me. So, from your perspective, what do you hope others will experience more of in their lives through your mission?
That's a really, really good question. I want people to feel like they have more agency in their
Mm.
life because I think when we feel like we have a sense of control over the choices that we make, the things that we do, we're there it's easier to have access to joy and happiness. So, I think, health can feel very overcomplicated, or especially the way that wellness I think is sometimes portrayed online can feel like you have to cross off a million things on your to-do list to be healthy, and then you feel out of control. But it's like you have the control within you to create the life that you want to live. And I want more people to feel that sense of agency and like dictating their own happiness.
Yeah. So, what are some myths that come up for you, either that you realized in this journey or from other people when it comes to agency?
Mm. Mm. Well, when it comes to agency, I think, there's like this irony around control because the way to gain more control in life is to actually recognize that basically everything is out of your control. So, really, like, how do we even therefore define what it means to have control, right? If so many things are not within our control. I think what for me what comes up with agency is this idea that life is a series of experiments. So there was an article that I read, a friend of mine sent me this article, and it's called High Agency in 30 Minutes. And the article was describing characteristics of people that have high agency and like what does it mean to be high versus low agency. A big takeaway was about having a bias for action. So this is why I love Nike's motto, just do it, because it's so true with anything in life. Like literally just do it, like just take the first step. So action and a bias towards that was a big takeaway. But the headline that really stood out to me was this idea of life being a series of experiments. And I think when we look at life as just testing like mini hypotheses, it makes it less hard to initiate that first step towards proving or disproving the hypothesis, and B, you're less tied to like that outcome or whatever that outcome is going to look like because you're just testing an experiment. And if the experiment doesn't go your way, well, it's just an experiment. It's not like this end all be all thing. So not sure if that answered your question around like myths or misconceptions about agency, but those are just some like broader themes that I've been thinking about as it pertains to what it means to have agency in life.
Well, what comes up is there can be usually, and I've experienced my own life, I'm sure you have too, where there's hesitation to like actually move forward and take that action, as you're talking about, like just doing it with Nike's slogan. And I'm wondering, like, I like that idea of the experimenting and the testing. And I really resonate with that in my own life. But why do you feel like people usually get stuck? It gets stuck and don't
Mm.
actually follow through and take that action.
I think there's like a variety of reasons. One of them is probably feeling, fear of how they're perceived by other people if they act in a certain way, fear of judgment, fear of, um, being ostracized. Like if you go back to the evolutionary basis of humanity and how we've evolved over time, very tribal. Like we want to feel like we fit into a group. So anything that might threaten being able to fit in is like deemed not good, right? And so I think something that holds us back is like, okay, how is this person or this group of people going to perceive what I'm doing? I think another part to this is like feeling a sense of paralysis of choice, like not even knowing where to begin. So I just won't even start. And that's really hard. I actually made a TikTok about this yesterday, and the concept was like journaling is really important because it is a practice that helps you gather data points on your life. And I work a corporate job. All I talk about every day is like being data driven, blah 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 blah, but like what if we were actually data driven in our own lives? Like what could that look like? And I think people have this fear of just acting because they don't know where to begin, but they don't even know what they want. Like, how many times in life do you feel like, oh, I don't know what I want? It's not just like when you're 18 and you're graduating high school and going to college and you're like, oh, I don't know what I want. The same question hits when you're graduating college, starting your first job, and the same question hits when you're in that first job and you're like, maybe I should leave and I should try something different, but I don't know what it is that I want. We don't really know what we want, which is, I think, what makes it hard to act sometimes.
Well, what comes up is the Tony Robbins quote where it's like your biggest problem. So, I mean, I'm paraphrasing it, but it's like your biggest problem is thinking you're not supposed to have any problems. And it's just like the same thing with the uncertainty. Like it'll always be there at every stage of life. And it's being able to accept that and that letting go, surrendering to that is a really powerful action. So for you, does like a specific, does a specific situation come up in your life where you had to meet that, how I think about it for the body or feel into it for the body is like resistance, and then how to move through it and follow through where there was a lot of uncertainty that came up for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, this can also really be applied to like relationships in life. And I feel like that's something I kind of come back to around learning to trust my intuition and navigate uncertainty, because something that I've kind of consistently experienced is, if I'm like seeing someone casually or dating generally, not really knowing how something's going to evolve or develop over time. And I've had trouble sitting with that uncertainty. Like, I've always just wanted to know how something was going to turn out. And I think it's been difficult at times to just let go and be like, okay, it's fine to not really know where this is going. You don't need to have all the answers. Like, the best you can do is just take things one step at a time. And I'm really grateful that I've had experiences where I've like come to this realization, because I think that that's like, once you're able to understand that and actually apply it into your life, it makes relationship management across all relationships just much easier, whether or not it's a romantic or platonic relationship. Like, there's only so much you can control. So the best you can do is just focus on yourself and other things will fall into place. But I've had trouble in the past navigating uncertainty with how certain like romantic pursuits, for example, were going to unfold, and like what that meant for me in my life. But I also do feel like the more time you spend ruminating on things that you just can't really control, like that doesn't actually move the needle anywhere for you and your own growth and development. So that's just something that I have really, I don't know, felt in the past few years and have navigated.
Yeah, and actually, if you are open to it, like diving a little bit deeper with like a specific situation that comes up romantically, because I think of people that are listening or watching this, business owners that are all about working hard, putting in the effort, and trying to push through. And so relationships, especially romantic, can be put on the sidelines, even though it's something that they want. And so, if you're open to it, it'd be cool to just learn more about like specifically what was going on for you with the thought processes and the uncertainty and how you're navigating that.
Yeah. And no, for sure. I'm happy to share. And also, just to your comment around being entrepreneurial, focused on building a business, building a community, our personal lives can go to the side, right? Because it's everything is in pursuit of the business. But I don't know how healthy that actually is. And something that I've learned through hosting my podcast and exploring like what it means to be happy is so much of it comes down to the quality of our relationships. Like, the strength of our interpersonal relationships is the number one predictor to our well-being and satisfaction in life. So for anyone out there who's listening, like, it's amazing to be ambitious and to want to build a brand and a community, but you can't let your personal life like be sacrificed while also driving towards that pursuit. So that's just like one piece of advice I would also share. And I mean, it's hard to find that balance, but back to your question, I remember I was like right out of college and I just come back to New York and getting my feet on the ground, starting my first job, all the things, keeping up the podcast. I developed a close relationship to someone, like a close friendship, and I could sense kind of the dynamic change a little bit. And all of a sudden I was receiving so much attention from this person in a way that suggested like interest beyond friendship, which was very confusing to me because I had considered us to always be friends. But then I was like, wait, I kind of like it. And at the same time, it was the first time in my life that was made so clear to me, like, what it could look like for someone to just show genuine like care and love towards me as a human, and see me for more than just the way I looked, or for more than just the things I was doing with my life or my intelligence or whatever, like just genuinely loving and caring for me as who I am, as the person that I am. And that was like a very overwhelming thing to experience and to have that awareness towards. And I ended up developing like romantic feelings towards this person, and was very convinced that when this person felt more confident in their career, when this person felt more confident in their ability to express how they felt, like when this, when that, then they would date me. And I was living in this fantasy for months, thinking that, well, when this, then that will happen. And that was really, really hard for me to come to terms with when things did not unfold in the way that I had expected them to. Like, I thought I was going to be dating this person and all these things, and nothing ever came of that relationship in a romantic sense. And that was really, really hard for me to sit with, because my head was not grounded in reality. I was so tied to the potential of this person. Or, I mean, over time, what I grew to realize also was the admiration that I had received from this person around what I was doing with my life, the brand that I was building. I mean, it kind of just like blew me away, and I couldn't even fathom that someone could see so much, um could really understand what I was doing, and find that really like admirable. And the longer I sat with that, and I was like, oh, Stella, like, this person's opinion matters so much to you. Like, why can't you just see within yourself that what you're doing is great and should be celebrated and all these things? Like, why is it taking the validation from someone else for you to believe that what you're doing is amazing and you're a successful human? I mean, I really had to sit with that. And I was very humbled when I realized that for so long, I put my worth at the hands of other people, and the
Mhm.
praise and recognition and all of that. And I didn't have this like intrinsic feeling within myself. And I didn't, I was relying on the validation externally, when I was like, oh, this is a wake up call for me to figure out how to give that to myself, and how to like fundamentally believe in the messaging that I was spreading. So I'm sharing all of this because I think that when things don't quote unquote go your way, it's less about things like unfolding in the way that you expect them to, and it's more about, what can you learn from this? Like, where is this experiencing highlighting gaps in your life where you can do the work and do better in your life, um, and really find ways to fill up your own cup. So it was an incredible learning opportunity. And I was never like in a relationship with this person, but I feel like I learned a lot. And I think in life, if we take that like learning mentality, like the growth mindset over the fixed one, it really helps move through things when things don't necessarily go your way.
Yeah, well, and a few things came up actually, where we can go down different paths here. But it reminded me with my life partner Adriana, like when we met, it was as friends, and then we traveled together as friends, and then
Yeah.
the next time we went to a new spot to travel, it changed. And having that change happen, and then being able to move forward into a relationship, what I connected to when you're talking is actually having someone be able to see you and see all of you, and be able to, like, you feel that pressure being released of like, oh, so it's okay for me to be me, and not feel like I'm putting on a mask,
Mhm.
or feeling like how should I show up based off of what they're telling me. And that, I feel, is such an important skill to continue to put the reps in and master, for people, is to not wait for others to create that space, but also for you to show up energetically as who you are. Because a lot of times, especially depending on how we grew up, like I'm the youngest of three brothers, and so I got a lot of shoulded on throughout my life. So it was like having to change that pattern and just noticing that,
Mm.
shift. And for you, you even talked about that for like the worthiness. What, like, if you can go into that moment of having that realization of like, why am I waiting for others, and like, why can I create this within myself? What were you feeling in that moment or in that
Mm.
experience? Like, what came up for you? Because I know it can be really hard for people when they're going through it to be like, oh, this makes sense, or like, this is natural. Like, I always come back to like, it's natural, even though it feels so weird in so
Mm.
many different ways. And so like, just not something you're used to. I'm curious for you what your experience was like when you felt that.
I felt incredibly disappointed in myself. I because I always felt like, oh, I don't have many problems, like, compared to people who struggle with, like, severe mental illness or have had, like, a ton of traumatic things and tragedies happen in their life. Like, I don't really have problems. Like, I'm quote unquote happy. And, if you looked at my life from an objective perspective, you could probably say that I have it pretty good. And I'm grateful for the life that I've built and the opportunities that I have. Like, it doesn't, I don't take that for granted. But when I realized in that moment, wait, like, I'm not actually as confident as I thought I was. There's a lot of room for improvement. Like, and this might sound ridiculous, and maybe I'll get like shit on for this, but when like people ask you what your strengths and weaknesses are, I could list all my strengths. Like, I could tell you what I'm good at. I could not tell you what I'm not so great at. And maybe the positive reframe is like, okay, I don't have a ton of negative self-talk, so like I can just list out all the things I'm good at. But like, it was in that moment where I was like, wait, like, there are a lot of things I am not so great at, and I'm actually not as great at filling up my own cup as I thought I was. And it was like a mirror being directly reflected back at me, and that was very, very uncomfortable to sit with. This whole experience put me into a bit of a darker headspace for some time. And it got to a point where I was like, okay, I should probably seek professional help. So I ended up going to therapy and starting that whole journey. And little did I know, like, that was the catalyst for diving into my childhood and the way I was raised and all these experiences that I had as a kid that I didn't realize had shaped me and influenced certain ways that I behave and ways that I think, neither good nor bad, just, observationally what they are. And therapy, like, absolutely was a catalyst towards a lot of spiritual growth. And it's kind of like, once you see those things, you can't really unsee them. And then it's up to you to decide, do you move forward or do you just feel bad for yourself? So it was a blessing, like, truly. But the initial feeling was a lot of disappointment and hurt too.
Mm. So, with other limiting beliefs, because I know you just mentioned this, and I think about that moment of the disappointment and how that can come up a lot. Just going out there, building a brand, creating a business, moving forward in life with each chapter. What were other limiting beliefs, and I call them like outdated beliefs that you
Mhm.
faced in that space to actually now notice your patterns that you faced while sharing your message, while building your brand? What are some other ones that come up?
Another big theme that came up for me was like not being like good enough. Like, no matter what I was doing, it was never enough. Oh, I did this partnership. Okay, the next one has to be even better. Has to
Yeah.
be bigger. I need X amount of listeners. I need X amount of followers to be taken seriously. Like, I remember one of my friends, this was a few years ago, we were like at a networking event or something. She also is very entrepreneurial, worked a corporate job, started a company on the side, ended up leaving her corporate job to do this. And anyways, I always admired her. And especially because she made the pivot to do her thing full time. And I remember we were at this networking event. We started talking to someone, and um, she was like, "Oh, this is my friend Stella. She has an incredible podcast. You should listen to it." And I was so embarrassed. I was like, "Oh, don't say that. Like, it's whatever." And I didn't realize that at the time, the limiting belief that I held was like, I'm not that great. I'm not that good. You know, I can feel that like I'm having fun doing these conversations, but like, who gives me the authority to self promote? Like, why would anyone listen to me? Those were thoughts that were very much circulating through my brain. And now as I reflect on that moment, and if you apply this to like more of a business context, or anyone who's an entrepreneur, you're trying to sell something like a service, a product, whatever it is, like how can you expect anyone to buy into your mission if you don't fully buy into it? And it's not like coming from a place of narcissism or being vain. It's like deeply believing in your value. And I knew what I was doing was valuable, but I couldn't articulate and fully step into that version of myself that like, it's like, yes, what I'm doing is actually great. And, I've built a repertoire of content, and I have upskilled myself, and I've become smarter about these topics because I've spent X amount of hours. Like I never even considered that. And I always had to wait for other people to give me that, oh yeah, she's smart, she's good at this, whatever, for me to believe it. But like I was very much struggling with this belief that I was intelligent and that what I was doing was like helping people or of service to others. And I think a lot of that comes back to growing up in a very academically competitive environment. Now, I wouldn't change anything about the way that I grew up or like the opportunities that I had. I'm so fortunate for all the like amazing schools that I went to as a kid in New York and where I went to college, and my parents very much like wanted to give me the best opportunities. But for example, like the high school that I went to was a specialized high school in New York. I was competing against my peers who were all 4.0 GPAs, getting into Ivy League universities, scoring basically perfect on the ACT and SAT. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, I got a 92 in this class. Like, smart, but not that smart because my friends are getting 95s, 97s. Oh, I got a 32 on the ACT. Well, my friend got a 35. So this is just average. Like, it's actually quite sad to think about now when I look back on that time. I don't think I realized how much I actually put myself down. But a lot of that was like very much coming up for me, like comparing against others and thinking, oh, well, I'm not as good as them. So I guess it's just not that great at all. But that's not true. So our limiting beliefs, if we don't keep them in check and if we don't build an awareness to them, can cause a lot of harm in our lives.
Yeah, it reminds me of like what I say, where it's like it's temporary as long as you keep moving forward too. Like
Mm-hmm.
that stuckness, you can hit like the imaginary wall, or when you're struggling and things just are not working out how you wanted them to.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I so relate to the feeling of not being smart enough. And who am I to like step up here and have a conversation with people, or to go up on stage and talk in front of a group of people when I can, barely ask a question without shaking. And it's interesting because that feeling of not good enough, what I notice is that entrepreneurs, there's a common theme of that. But then also just people in general, there's a common theme of not deciding to take a leap into something unfamiliar
Mm-hmm.
because of the feeling of not good enough. I'm wondering, it'd be great to get your take on that, of why you feel that is that people hesitate, going back to what we've talked about this before with the hesitation, but specifically with like not feeling good enough, why that comes up.
I feel like because, well, social media doesn't help at all. Now that we have access to basically anyone at our fingertips digitally, we can constantly compare, and then that skews our perspective because we're looking at ourselves in the context of, it's like comparing apples to oranges, right? I remember um feeling like, going back to the relationship stuff, there was a guy that I was seeing who had built this like amazing comedy group in New York. And I felt so insecure because I was like, well, his followers are, he's growing on his account and I'm not. So like, what am I doing wrong? Or there, therefore I'm not going to ever grow. And it's like, you can't compare a, the business of comedy to a podcast. Like these are two separate things. And I feel like it comes back to we're comparing apples to oranges. We're comparing, at the beginning, and it it breeds this like self-induced paralysis of acting. Um, I think a lot of it comes from just thinking that things are greener on the other side, but it's not. And also sometimes I think about some of the best artists in this world. They didn't. I doubt that they had a thought in their mind like, oh, I'm not worthy of like being on this stage, so I'm not even going to write the song. Like think about like the most famous people now, like the most famous musicians, rappers, whatever. Like, I doubt Drake is like thinking or used to think about himself in the like, oh, I'm going to make this rap song, but it's not going to go anywhere. Like if you feel like you have talent, like you have to believe that you have that talent. And I really do feel like that self-belief, like there has to be kind of a healthy dose of delusion to bring success into your life. And the people that are successful, the way that we see it at least portrayed online and celebrities, thought leaders, whatever, like I think there was a bit of a healthy dose of delusion that contributed to that success.
I resonate with conviction is a word that comes up with that
Mm-hmm.
down conviction. We talked about that before, and believing in it. But I also know that there are certain different ways you can go about it. Going back to like a mentor telling me there's no one right way, but there's a right way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, what comes up for me then, okay, well, two things to wrap it up with with comparison for you, what habits do you go towards with navigating comparison? Because I don't believe, like, I believe it's really hard to get rid of comparison. Like, we can have those moments where we're not comparing with other people. But do you have any specific habits or ways that you navigate comparison when it comes up for you?
Yeah. I think I have to just recognize like where my brain is heading and be like, okay, wait, this isn't like actually you, Stella. This is like a little voice in your mind. You can name her something else that's creeping in, but you don't have to give that voice power over you and like allow that voice to dictate your behaviors. So I kind of like personify that voice and I also de identify it from myself. That's been a helpful strategy, I would say. I also think social media perpetuates the whole comparison stuff. And for me now, what I try to do more is to create more than consume. So by consuming less, I'm not seeing all the stuff online. So I'm like, okay, great. I'm just going to create a bunch of content, put it out there, and let it be. And I'm not going to like waste my time scrolling and allowing myself to get stuck in that comparison loop. And then the last thing I will try to remind myself is that not everything is as it seems. So why would I compare myself against someone else when their life's entirely different from mine? And like, frankly, it may look like they're super successful on the outside, but are they really happy on the inside? I would rather be content and happy within myself than have all these things just to show for it, you know?
Yeah. Well, and it reminds me of baseline. Like I talk about that of like, okay, looking back on your own personal baseline and have you compared where you started to where you are and noticed growth that's been happening on, as you said, the internal, it can be internal. It doesn't have to be just external. I'm always like, how we make both happen. Like that'd be great to make both happen. But yeah, I resonate with that. And then for the voice, okay, this is where it gets like, it can get weird for people like, okay, this voice, like what the hell is this shit? Like they're talking about. So share with me more actually like what goes on in that moment. Like do you feel like it's in your head that you have this voice? Do you journal it out and that's how it comes through? Do you
Mm,
sit and notice in like a part of your body and tension and sensations? Like
yeah.
what really is that experience like for you?
I can be so caught up in my head. So it's actually less for me, at least like a somatic experience. And it's more in my head. Like I will feel brain fog or just like clouded.
Mhm.
And then that will kickstart kind of more of the anxiety. And those are like the nerves for me, at least that show up. The voice, it's not like there's different voices in my head that sound different. Like it's all just this internal monologue that's just spinning, 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 spinning. But then I categorize like the tone of these thoughts and like that's how I start to delineate like is this a thought that's going to be in service of me or is this just like my anxiety spiraling? And if I can recognize like okay, that's where this is coming from. I I try to like objectify my lived experience if that makes any sense. So like I'm a very visual person. This might not make sense to many people. Maybe you might actually resonate with this, but sometimes I think about my life or just life in general as a book. And I am reading this book and I'm flipping through the pages, I'm going through the chapters, and all these like cool, crazy, fun moments are happening. But like naturally the chapters end and then naturally the book's going to end. So anything that unfolds is just part of the story, that I'm reading. So when I get really caught up in like, do I do this choice or do I make that choice or do I do this or what's this person gonna like, blah, blah, all these things that will like make me spiral. I try to take a step back and I'm like, okay, Stella, it's just the book. You're just at a certain chapter and then the next chapter is going to come. So why waste your time freaking out when like there's more words on the page that are coming down the line? And that's just what I try to think about. And it actually grounds me and it brings me back to the present moment because I'm like, okay, I'm here right now. I don't need to wish to be there in the next 5-10 years. They're going to happen. So just enjoy where you're at right now. And that helps me identify the voice and then be like, okay, chill out. Let's get back to like the here and now.
Mm. So going off of that, based off of how you experience it for the outlook of visual, for the belief, like kind of like knowing it's going to happen or the conviction, what was your method to cultivate that skill for yourself of conviction within you? Is it setting a vision and then being able to say, I'm working towards this, or like a vision board, or is there any other things that pop up for ways that you do that?
I think, yeah, it's like, I wish I had a better answer actually, because I wish it was like I journal every day and I vision board every other day. Like, I don't have a routine. I really only draw on these tools when I feel like I need it. But something that I am big on, you know, I'll fluctuate doing this, but like gratitude journaling, I feel like can be very helpful. I also fluctuate between like periods of consistent meditation, even if it's like 5 minutes of breath work. And then additionally, I do actually love vision boarding, and I find that doing that like semi regularly, at least on like at the very least on an annual basis, because I like to do it around like the new year and all of that. But even like every 4 to 6 months, like checking in and just refreshing like kind of the vibes that I want to attract or like the things that are drawing me and putting that out visually is really helpful. I remember this year around, or like this last year technically, like November, December, I remember like journaling a lot and getting really clear on like the themes that I took away from 2024, the things I was excited for 2025, and writing it down. That way, when the new year actually rolled around, I wasn't like, oh my God, I have to make my resolutions list and do all these things. Like, I actually felt like, okay, this is just a continuation of time. Now it's boom, 2025. I already did the work to figure out like what I want for this year, so I'm not so overwhelmed by it. So that's actually a fun little trick that now I'm going to employ for this year, is to like get a bit more introspective in the months leading up to the new year in January. Because I think that is actually quite helpful for setting you up for like success moving into a new chapter or into the new year.
Well, for you, like, it reminds me of like that head start, like creating that momentum going into it for the new year. Like, why does that resonate for you? Like getting that head start and then being able to, I think about it for dealing with certain situations that come up, you go to then these, if it's tools, habits, it's like almost like letting the world come to you and then you navigate it and you figure out how to move forward. And I'm curious, like, where you feel like that comes from for you.
That's a hard question. I don't know. I think I've always been very introspective, just as a human. Like, I've always gravitated towards the deeper questions, the deeper topics. I think as a kid, I've always just had this desire to like understand why certain things happened in life. Like, I just always wanted answers. And now I'm learning to get comfortable with the fact that you'll probably never have any answers. You just make your best educated guess and then you move forward in life. And I think for me, having these little check ins, like these little self audits periodically, help me stay aligned with the life that I want to build rather than waiting to do it in January. It's like, why should I wait till a new year to do this? Like, let me do this a bit more frequently when it feels like I need it to help kind of course correct and get me back on the path that I want to be in my life. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, it does. I mean, I connect to the what you just said of trying to understand how the world works. Like and I don't know. Yeah, it'd be great to get your take on this because it's like like there's like two energies or whatever you could call it, like two little blocks or however someone wants to picture this going with visual or feel into this, where it's understanding where like the fundamental truths
Mm.
of like if it's okay business, okay, what do I need to do, if it's creating a service like product, being able to sell that to someone that wants that, providing value in exchange for other value, or understanding how the world works when it comes to nature or seasons. And so there's like that, like understanding, like trying to, because I felt so like uncertain about the world and felt like, oh man, I'm not safe in this world because I don't really understand what's going on.
Mm.
But then there's also what you talked about of then realizing you're going to have to just guess into the uncertainty, into the unknown. Like, yes, you can have all the information, but then you've never been there. And so you have to move
Mhm.
forward. So I really resonate with what you just said. I don't know, you have anything comes from what I just said for you for another take with that.
Yeah, because I feel like I have wasted time in a way where I've tried to just like get an answer about how things are in the world. And now it's more like there's just going to be a lot of stuff out of my control. And I'm not actually going to ever really know the answers. So I might as well just let things unfold and like focus on how can I show up the best that I can every day within this like crazy world that we live in. Like how can I just focus on creating my own world within the sea of uncertainty that we live in. Like what are the things that I can come back to that I know are true to me and true to who I am that I can anchor on despite whatever's going on around me. Um, and I think that's why also for me, like yoga is an amazing practice because it helps get you into that headspace and like really just slow down for a second. Um, yeah, and I also think actually this is different. I feel like I've wanted answers because I couldn't trust that like I was never just fine with like my own take on something. Like I always felt like I needed an answer from someone else. Like they had the authority, they had the knowing. But as you grow older and you move through this world, like what does it mean to develop your own knowing and to believe that and to be settled with that and to not need anyone else's opinion or perspective? And that's something that I really feel like I've been working on is like developing that inner trust because sometimes you don't need to keep asking the why and get the answers and all the things when you just learn how to trust yourself more.
It just reminds me of like transitioning into an adult, like that
Yeah.
feel like it's I think about it,
Yeah.
it's like there could be adults technically with age, but they're still kids, like in
Mhm.
how they act. And I think about that transition can be very scary. I noticed that for myself, like where it's still appreciating the kid like parts of me, like the inner child, if you want to go that route, but like just like that joy that can come up from a kid like energy, and then also realizing, oh yeah, I can now take responsibility and be able
Yes.
to get out of the victim mindset. Because what comes up for me is helplessness.
Mm.
Otherwise, if you're not willing to figure out what that truth, what truths are out there, and then what you resonate with, most importantly, of how you want to
Mm.
navigate life. Um, yeah, I'm curious what some of your truth. You were just talking about discovering some of your truths that resonate for you. What are some of those?
I um as I reflected a lot on again, it comes back to like wanting to figure out the why behind things. Like I feel like over time the answers reveal themselves as to why certain things happen or how certain things unfold. And something that I've realized to be very true about me is like this love for storytelling and for connection. And when I was a kid, kind of to what you said around like your inner child and tapping into those sources of joy, I was like, I loved the camera. I loved the camera. I loved performing. I grew up in New York and I actually sang in the Metropolitan Opera, like in the children's chorus for 8 years of my childhood. And I loved being on stage. Like I loved expressing myself through the creative arts. And that part of my personality kind of muddled away. It just wasn't as big for my high school years because that was more so focused on school and getting good grades. And I had joined a rowing team. So now it was like athletics and school and academics. And then when I got to college, it was all about going out and doing my classes. And that was, I mean, that was it. Like the transition in and of itself was like big to move to college, all the things. But now is like I am building my career and I'm in this client services industry and I have this podcast and I teach yoga. Like when I think about how I fill up my time, my free time, doing interviews, even if I didn't want to have a podcast, like I would still want to do that in my free time. I'd still want to connect with random people and talk to new people and build connection and community that way. Teaching yoga, it's like a performance in a way, you know, like you're creating an atmosphere for people to feel good in themselves. Even hosting a podcast, it's not performative, but it's a performance. And this truth that I keep coming back to is like, I like being seen in this way. And it actually makes me feel really good to use to create a platform and to feel seen by doing that. And I think I knew that truth was always there, but I always like suppressed it. Like, oh, I'm doing too much, or oh, this is too much, or whatever. But now I'm owning the truth. Like I like being in front of a camera, but not from a vanity perspective, but because I like to communicate in this way. And I think when we can recognize like what our strengths are and what our superpowers are, like, and we really lean into that, like that's what makes you who you are. Like we should lean into the things that light us up because that's a beautiful gift to have passions and interests. And if you can honor that, like that is not to sound cliche, but that's your truth. Like if you can lean into the things that make you feel good, that you're good at and that excite you, like that is a truth.
Well, it goes back to like, yeah, there's no one right way to, if it's fulfilling life, successful life, but there is a right way for you. And it's knowing that, coming back to that, what's the feeling like that comes up for you for liking something, like, or loving it, or feeling like this is it, the being seen, the interviews, like what's that feeling like?
I feel, I guess the best way to put it is like, as I was continuing to interview and build the brand, run the show, I came away from all the like components of what it takes to build a podcast, like feeling incredibly energized by that. And I think that if you come away from an activity feeling energized and like you want to keep doing more of that, like that's a sign that you like it. And that's a sign that you're probably good at it too. And I think for me now, what I'm realizing is, okay, maybe it's not a podcast interview. That's what energizes me. If I dig deeper, it's getting to talk to people below the surface, right? Like that's what gets me excited. Getting to learn from other people is what gets me excited and energized. Getting to build a perspective on like what is happiness? What does it mean to find your endorphins? And then find ways to express that, be it through an episode, through an event, through a partnership. Like that creative thinking excites me. And I think the beautiful thing is if we can identify like the experiences and the skills that energize us, that never leaves you. You can bring that to any sort of interaction or experience or job. So it's like those are transferable things, which I think is a beautiful understanding to have, because all of that creative energy, it's always within. It's not necessarily the product, but it's like the act of creating.
And then going into even deeper, energizing that feeling, what sensations come up for you? Because I know when I was starting to get into this, I numbed a lot of my feelings going into, being an entrepreneur, and even years before that, I got into that pattern as a habit. So just feeling energized, it was like, oh, what the fuck is this? Like, this is so weird. So it'd be cool to know for you what energizing sensation, like what the
Mm.
sensations are that come up? Like,
It's
how do
like
you
a
know you're energized?
it's like a lightness.
Mm.
There's like a lightness I think that comes with that. There's um there's a sense of momentum also. I think that's a big one. If I feel energized, I don't want to stop. I'm like, oh no, I want to do the next thing, and I want to keep. It's like a healthy drug, I guess. It's that positive upward spiral, right? So in from like a sensation perspective, it's like a feeling of lightness. It's a feeling of warmth, actually, too. Like if I feel like I come away from a conversation feeling energized or good, I'm like, wow, I feel warm. I feel like love. Like I feel like a strong sensation of love in a way. And I also feel at ease. Like I feel very peaceful. There's no resistance. It just kind of flows effortlessly.
Yeah, the flow, that really resonates for me. That's what comes up for me. And then similarly as like the warmth, and it's like for me it reminds me of like opening up a door, and then there's that openness that comes from that door, and it's just like, oh, okay, there's no resistance here, just going for it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so with happiness, because it's I think about it for the Declaration of Independence, it's in there for happiness. Like, how do you define happiness?
Mm. I think there's two things that have really stood out to me as far as defining happiness and what it means to be happy. So the first is that happiness is really about finding joy along the way in life. And it's back to that analogy I used earlier, the metaphor of like flipping the page and you're reading the book of your life. And it's like there's more words that are coming down in the next chapter. Happiness is like, wow, there are words right here. And like, that's amazing. And I'm not going to worry about the way the words take shape on the next page. Like, it's a sense of gratitude. It's a sense of like being fully present with where you are in life. And I think something that ties into this is my second biggest learning from what it means to be happy is I really do believe that happiness is about really like the ability to tolerate the discomfort and like be okay with negative emotions, because happiness doesn't just like what's the word, cross out
Mm,
unhappiness. Like it doesn't eliminate it. That's the word I was looking for. The presence of happiness doesn't necessarily mean there's an absence of disappointment, sadness, whatever. So it's like human emotions are incredibly complex, and you can hold two things at once. Like you can recognize that two truths can exist at once, but are also in conflict. And when we learn how to like regulate our emotions, sit with discomfort, and recognize that life is just not easy, like it's hard, but that's kind of the whole point. And it's like, well, if that's the whole point and that's how it's going to be anyway, might as well find joy along the way. And for me, that's where the happiness comes in. It's knowing that things are not going to be great, and yet you can still be great. You can still choose to see the positive and have an optimistic mentality. And like I mentioned earlier with that first story I gave with the expectation of a relationship and things not going the way I wanted them to, that was not like a happy time in my life, but my God, did I learn so much. And I'm so happy that I learned that. And it's also like beautiful to recognize that our brains have the capacity to hold so many things at the same time, so many emotional experiences at once. And like that, I think really fills me up. And that's what happiness is about. It's not this toxic positivity bullshit stuff. Like it's about like leaning into the hard things and knowing that you're going to be fine on the other end.
yeah, that goes to the adventure. Like it creates such a powerful adventure, and it's like feels like shit at times. Like as you're saying, it does. Um, and with joy, that feeling, and you were even talking about like being present. But does that connect to you to this energizing feeling, or are there other sensations that also come up that are different relating to joy, or are they
Mm.
the same for you?
Joy definitely comes up with that feeling of being energized, because I do think when I'm energized, I'm in a more joyful state. I think that happiness might be more of like a fleeting feeling. Like, a cup of coffee can make you feel really happy, but you're going to drink it, then it's gone, right? But like joy, I think, is a bit more like everlasting. Like if something is joyful to you, the the activity, the experience itself is like actively filling up your cup, right? Whereas we can tap into certain behaviors that maybe bring us happiness, but it's incredibly fleeting. And maybe those things that we gravitate towards in the moment are just kind of a quick fix. And yeah, maybe they make us happy in the moment, but are we taking steps that are we making choices that are going to help create like more longevity with being able to experience more joy in life? And that goes to this whole point of like delayed gratification too. So happiness and joy, like it can be very interesting to delineate them because although they fall under the same umbrella, like I think they can also mean very different things.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it's interesting even to go into uh, like you were saying, it's like it can be fleeting, but then you have joy, where that can be something a little bit more consistent. But then you also have those moments where it feels like shit, like sitting in the discomfort. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering, with sitting in the discomfort, like what's a specific situation that comes up for you, that you think about, for like a moment, like a story relating to having to sit in that discomfort, and then you are also in that same moment, being able to create the joy or the happiness that.
Mhm. I'll give a very recent example. I recently switched roles in my job and I'm on a completely different project with a new team in an area I know barely anything about. And it's like very uncomfortable. Like I'm on these calls where I'm expected to give a perspective on something that I mean, it's a steep learning curve. And it's tough, but like I know this is the like what I need to grow and to learn how to be more confident in giving a perspective, like in a corporate context, for example. Another way I am finding joy in this is like, wow, like how cool is it that I get to work with this new group of people who are brilliant? Like I'm going to learn from them, right? Like how awesome is it that I'm now in a role that's like actually very stimulating to me, even though it's tough. Like it's making me think. It's making me realize, oh, well, maybe I'm not as good at this one thing as I thought I was, but now I'm going to give myself the extra time to perfect that craft or to get better at this. When you can recognize that you're not so good at something, the only way to get better is to like not let the recognition stifle you and know that like you not being good at something at a point in time doesn't mean you're going to be bad at it forever. So I try to use that as opportunity to be like, okay, I'm not so good at this right now, but I'm going to improve. And therefore, in XYZ amount of time, like I'll be better and I won't be not so great at it anymore. So it's like, even in these periods of discomfort, it still is an excitement because I'm like, wow, I'm so grateful that I have this new opportunity. And like right now, it's the most relevant application is like with this change in roles and the things that are going on at my job. But I think really with anything in life, it's still like you can apply the same thinking.
Yeah, for me, like being on the path of growth is where I get the most fulfillment. Like that for me is a fulfilling life. I resonate. And then, like, what do I not know about you that would make sense for why you're so passionate about this mission?
Mm, that's such a good question. I was gonna. Well, most people don't know that I sang in the Metropolitan Opera, but I gave that one earlier. I think that you know, there's a few things that come to mind, but when it comes to like what really sharpened my interest in health and well-being, I remember like when I was in high school, college, I had struggled a lot with like different hormonal issues and it was very exhausting to figure out like what do I eat? How do I exercise? Like what do I do to be healthy? What do I do to balance my hormones? And I felt like anything I was doing was just like not yielding the results I wanted. And I felt incredibly discouraged. And it was really hard for me to feel like I had a sense of control over my health when there were so many things out of control. And like no matter what I was doing, it wasn't working, right? And I put a lot of like shame and guilt on myself and I just didn't it was just very hard for me to take aligned action to like become healthier. And that experience, I think, really made an impression on me and made me get really like passionate about health and like understanding that health is not like a one size fits all. Like something that is healthy for you might be unhealthy for someone else. So like what health something being healthy is also completely subjective too. And I think that like that time when I was more of a young adult and going through some of those like health struggles or just like a lot of confusion, misinformation, also tons of different sources of information. I just couldn't like filter through it and feel informed. And that was really tough for me. Especially when growing up my whole life, I only ever thought I was healthy. Like I always ate well and I was active as a kid, but I mean, I was on a rowing team. I was an athlete in high school, and then all these shifts happened, and it was like, okay, now how do I stay healthy? Like, I don't know what to do. So that was definitely something that was very formative, I think.
Did a lot of yeah, because you're mentioning the like the guilt was coming up, or but like the fear, was there any? Yeah, share with me more of that experience because I resonate with it. I went through a journey, and I feel like others that are wanting to take care of their health as they're growing their business, it's such a important thing to step into or move into. But at the same time, there can be a lot of fear that comes up because it shifts how you're looking even at the world. Like it's just such a weird experience. And so you would like I always come back to like three things. I'm safe. It's like in the moment I'm safe. If I'm navigating some change, it's natural and like this is temporary. So I'm curious. Yeah, I'm wondering for you what that was like in actually deciding to face it and learn more about your body and your health.
Yeah. Well, I thought that like my body was like fighting against me, and I was like, oh, there's something wrong with me. And I then I was like, wait, there's nothing wrong with me. Like this is something that a lot of people experience. I just have to find ways to like change my lifestyle to become healthier. Like it doesn't have to be so, oh my God, like your body's fighting against you. You're never going to get healthy. Like I had to let go of that narrative and realize, like, okay, so yeah, maybe I'm experiencing like hormonal imbalances, but that's okay. Like there's things I can do to help balance it. And it's not a reflection of like my body being broken. You know, that feeling was very hard for me to sit with because I had felt that for some time. But then I changed the narrative and it made it much easier to do certain things that would like support um keeping more regulated hormones and like finding ways to keep them in more balance.
Because I share this before where it's like these nearly 40 trillion cells. Like I say it's like they're on your team. Like your body's
Mhm.
on your team. And so I
Yeah.
had a very similar reaction, which is like, oh shit, like I am battling my body. Like my body is not
Mhm.
naturally able to heal and like take care of all the different, if it's toxins coming into my life, like it's not able to do that. And so like there's something just inherently wrong with my
Mhm.
body. But it's similar to what you talk about, and I think it's really important to highlight this, where it's like it's patterns. It's like noticing what those patterns are, how your body's reacting, it's communicating to you. And I've said it's like one of the greatest skills you can master. I mean, as an entrepreneur and just as a human being, is like communication with your body.
Mhm.
Knowing that it's there to want to support you, support your vision, support what you're creating. So it's really cool that you share that too. That happened for you, a similar experience.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. And for me, also like creating that relationship or that open line of communication between my brain and my body is it's like having a more disciplined workout routine, just moving daily, whatever that could look like. It's tapping into meditative moments, whether that is an actual seated 15, 30-minute meditation or like taking the time to go to a sauna and like carve out that time or do a breath work, like, or go on a walk. Like, I consider walks to be very, very meditative, especially when they're by the water down the West Side Highway. Cause just looking at that, I could look at that forever. That is my happy place. But it's like finding those moments, I think, to feel that intuition with your body. And there's practices that, you know, they don't work for everyone, but you should just try and see what resonates with you and do that, you know?
Yeah, where does the water come from? Because I have a similar thing with water, and I'm like, how did that happen for you?
Mm. Well, I grew up in New York, so it's not like I grew up on like a beach town. I don't know. I've just always liked, as a kid, I always liked swimming and like being by the sea and in the water and the pool. I think that with water, there's like a flow to it, right? There's a rhythm, and rowing is incredibly rhythmic. It's a water sport. I mean, the sport is incredibly hard and your legs are burning, but then you're gliding on the water. Like there's again, it's like that duality. There's the pain and then there's the beauty. And it's like they're happening, it's in the same picture, but doing something very physically intensive on the water on like a very calm, you know, surface. Well, I guess it's not really surface, but you know what I mean. Just there was something about that was like very meditative. And then I also grew up playing the violin, and I did that for some time. And music, rhythm, melody, like to me, the water is an element that represents that like rhythm, that flow state, that like calm, that ease, that peacefulness. So I think being by the water, I mean, I could literally, my favorite time is like now when the sun sets at like 7 p.m. Just watching the way the light hits the water and how it ripples, it's just very, very calming to me.
Mm. Yeah, I resonate, and I'm really, this is just like my take on it. I don't have like the evidence to back it up right now, but I do feel like the more moments we can come back to where we felt safe, if it's like as a kid or these moments where we do feel safe, like that is where we can tap into then more of our potential within us. How I
Mm-hmm.
define it as like a capacity for growth, and like actually then courageously like take more action and take more leaps. So like strategically also, and just having fun and going and experiencing that, but like strategically incorporating that in your day, especially on those tough days, where it's the things that you feel safe or excited or just feel relaxed with, makes such a big difference and impact for then how you show up
Mm-hmm.
with the harder stuff too.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And it's like now the way I live my life is I would rather, if going to watch the water and watch the sunset, for example, is going to make me feel more safe and a sense of inner peace than like stuffing my face with a sweet green salad just because it's like healthy and running a million miles, I would choose the stillness versus the like needing to overdo it and cross every dimension of health, because
Mhm.
then I'm going to feel exhausted and I'm going to resent the activities that should actually be making me feel good. So I think it's really a matter of like, yeah, like I like what you said about that inner safety piece.
Yeah, well, and for other habits, you mentioned a few already, but like, what are some habits they use to avoid burnout? And like for me, just how
Mm-hmm.
I define it is like forcing yourself on the business side to have to close down the business, let go of the business because you don't have the capacity, it feels like, in your body to handle the stress that can come from growth or come from
Mm-hmm.
challenges. So for you, just in your day to day life, what are some other go to habits that
Yeah.
you use or that
Yeah.
you practice?
I think so. Yeah. Some of the ones I mentioned earlier, like the journaling, the movement, all of those things. Um, I also feel like it's a lot. I mean, this applies to burnout, but anything in life too. It's just the way in which we move through the world is directly a reflection of the thoughts we're thinking in our head. So the burnout, I think, also is a byproduct of like all the craziness that's going up in my head. So if I can find ways to calm down my brain, I can eliminate or at least reduce that feeling of burnout kind of manifesting itself in my life. So for me, a lot of it comes back to like, okay, if I feel overwhelmed, I have to remind myself like things will get done. I can be a bit more patient with myself. And I'm going to see this as a challenge on like, well, how do I learn how to prioritize better so that I don't feel as overwhelmed? Um, how do I create more space for myself and for reflection? I mean, something I've struggled with is like being a little too social and like just doing too many things. It's just like it's great to be social and to meet people and be connected, but like I used to see, let's say, a weeknight was free. Okay, got to fill that in with a plan. Now I see, I don't know, a Wednesday night free, and I'm like, great, that's time to myself and like a date that I'm going to make for me. And I think when we can put in more time just for ourselves, it helps navigate the feelings of burnout and stress and the exhaustion that comes from that.
When the internal, you're talking about that with these, like, I call them the tornado thoughts just happen and letting them bounce around because my mind pinballs. And so having to really work on that when the internal calmness can come in and that peace, I do feel like it comes from that place, and it would be cool to get your take on this. It does come from this place of like, when you say you're going to do something, like honoring a commitment, you're like, okay, I'm going to do this, or like, it's scary, but I'm going to go do, talk to this person or reach out with an email or, go for the sale. I'm going to follow through on it. And I'm wondering, commitment, what your take is on honoring commitments.
Very good question. I really believe that inner trust also comes from like this idea of self-efficacy. Like you have to follow through with the things that you say you're going to do. So, and also when you do that, you realize that your words have more weight than like, you maybe typically realize they do. So it's like being really intentional with saying you're going to do something and then actually following through, because so many people say they're going to do things and they don't do the things that they say they're going to do. So how can you trust yourself to make any change if you're not showing up for yourself? Like you have to be disciplined with yourself. And I don't mean being hard on yourself, but it's like if you say you're going to go to the gym, right? Like you have to go to the gym because you told yourself you were going to do it. And then you get into this habit and this muscle and you're like, okay, well, these behaviors are now kind of like on autopilot. Like they become second nature because you're so used to showing up for yourself. And for me, sometimes I get stressed about how do I fit everything in my day? And let's say with the gym example, let's say my intention is to work out one day. And if I want to sleep in and I'm like, oh, well, now I'm not going to do it in the morning. I try really hard to be like, okay, I slept in, I needed the rest, but I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I'm going to find another pocket, even if it means I'm only working out for 20 minutes. I'm still going to do something because then I'm honoring the commitment I made to myself. I've had instances where I've slept in, I've not worked out in the morning. I wanted to work out the whole day, and then I end up wasting time and just not doing. I procrastinate it because I feel bad that I slept in, right? And it's like you're just adding fuel to the fire. Sometimes you got to let certain things go, but don't beat yourself up on it and just like act, So that's another way I think for me, it's like building that trust.
Yeah. How I connect to that is like the at least technique, where I'll just tell myself, okay, at least if I had planned 20 minutes and I only got 5, I'll do 5, or similar to what you say, which I mean, it's hard. Like I notice that for people, it can be for entrepreneurs, it can be really challenging where like you said, okay, 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock or, 6 a.m. I was going to go work out because I missed that deadline. Now I'm all out. Like I'm not even going to do it. And it's interesting. It's so hard for someone to like be like, oh no, let me give myself the whole day. So I think that's such an important part to highlight is like, give yourself the day to honor the commitment if it can't happen at a certain time. And like, that's okay because you're still showing up for yourself and you're doing it. The biggest thing for the body is the consistency. Like continue to put those reps in and just don't completely give up on it if you have the opportunity.
Yes.
And there's some days where nobody's perfect. Give yourself grace, but that's such a key thing to highlight.
Yes. And if let's say this happens 5 consecutive days in a row, right? If every single day you were like, you had the intention to wake up early, work out, and then you just end up like not doing it and then saying, okay, screw it, I'm just not going to work out the whole day. Versus if you took the mentality and you were like, okay, well, I only have 20 minutes, so I'm going to do the 20 minutes. 20 times 5, you've got 100 minutes of exercise over those 5 days versus net 0 if you have that. So it's like even the smallest things every day, they do end up adding up more than if you just had that all or nothing black or white mentality. And then you're going to make yourself feel bad because you're going to be like, oh, well, now I never follow through with doing what I say I'm going to do. It's like this very fixed mindset. It's very easy to like spiral down that. And then it's even harder to get out of that and to act,
do you have a specific situation that comes up for you that right now where you think about those 5 days, you had those 5 days, and then like, how did you get out of that?
Well, I think actually, the working out is what's coming up for me. That's probably why I'm saying it, because this week I looked at my calendar and I was like, I'm going to be good and I'm going to wake up early before my 9 a.m.s every day and I'm going to get in my exercise. And Monday I did that. Tuesday, I forget what I did on Tuesday. I think I must have worked out I don't really remember. But then Wednesday, I was like, okay, I'm going to rest on Wednesday. But then I ended up getting the 2 vaccines and it knocked me out all of Thursday. And I was like, great. Well, I wanted to exercise, but I didn't do anything. I ended up teaching yoga on Thursday. So I still got in physical movement, but it wasn't like dedicated Stella workout time. And then today on Friday, I also wanted to wake up early, do the thing, but I was still exhausted from the past few days. So I let myself sleep in and just log on and work and do my thing. And I had like a 40-minute gap in the middle of the day. So I decided to go on like an inclined walk on the treadmill. And I was like, okay, Stella, you still worked out today. Like, even if it wasn't what you had intended for, you still moved your body. And I showered and I put on makeup and I like changed my outfit. I was like, okay, it's these little things that shift your mindset. And now I just feel like 10% better. And because I feel 10% better, I'm going to show up better for all the things I have to do for the rest of the day. So for me, this is what's coming up because I've just been feeling very depleted energy wise this week and exhausted and also overwhelmed. But it's like really those small little things, I think.
Reminds me of the small wins lead to big wins. Well, thank you, Stella. I so appreciate all that you shared. I know it's going to be super valuable for people that are watching or listening. How can entrepreneurs connect with you?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been really wonderful. And you ask very like thought-provoking questions that are like my brain has been spinning for the past hour in a good way. For those who are listening, you can connect with me. My LinkedIn is Stella Stephanopoulos, but if you want to listen to the show and stay plugged into the community that I'm building, Everyday Endorphins is my podcast. So you can listen to it on all streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple. And then I also have an Instagram called Everyday Endorphins where I post about any events that I'm doing, the episodes that I'm releasing. I also have a TikTok, which is also Everyday Endorphins. And then I have gotten into creative writing and I do that through Substack now. So I will periodically release content on Substack that's related to joy and my own takeaways and also just some cool recaps from episodes that I've done. So if you just Google Everyday Endorphins, you'll find it all.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, I can include some links too down below. Thank you so much, Stella. I really appreciate it. It was awesome.
Thank you.